Sorry, trauma-informed yoga teacher.
I know last time I recorded and I was like,
you don't want it to be recorded. No,
yeah, last time I started recording and I was like, I didn't ask everyone.
It's like the hands-on adjustments of Zoom.
Yeah. So Shamala, we did a bigger verse last time, and then we just kind of riffed through that one, and it took us over an hour, so well, pretty much an hour. So I think I just picked a single verse this time. Let me jump to it. So basically with Lectio Divina, we'll read the verse 3 times, go through a little process of reading it, meditation, prayer, and contemplation, basically asking these 4 questions along the way, and then kind of riffing off those questions. Sound good? Is that familiar to any? Did you used to do Lectio Divina? Or you're just familiar with it?
I did. I found out about it probably about 10, 15 years ago. And I've done it some.
So you're the pro?
No.
But it's interesting interplay to use the Hindu text. Actually, I got the idea from a group from Harvard Divinity School who actually does Harry Potter. Called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text.
Yeah, because we are making a religion out of Harry Potter now.
So I threw this into a random number generator. Gorga says we only read to chapter 5, so I apologize if I'm ahead.
Maybe I'm wrong. It wouldn't be the first time.
This is chapter 6, verse 7 and 8.
Okay.
The text that we have doesn't have the Devanagari or the transliteration either, or usually it doesn't. But I did post one in the group that has a PDF that has the Devanagari and the English. Unfortunately, you don't get that nice like Devanagari transliteration in English all together. If you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you're probably used to that. So someone has to do it. Oh, baby is doing things. So this is the verse that the random number generator threw at me. 1, 6, 7, and 6, 8. Na tesham sada sagyanam vivekuna cha mokshadaha pashupiste samagyaneya yesham na shravanadaraha mrigdaya pashava kechi jananti shravanam sukam ashrutra paninaschaiva mumuhurnada panataha. So thank you, Ramali, for reminding us this is a Sanskrit text. It's easier to chant Sanskrit than it is to actually like speak it. So last time, I didn't have the transliteration ready, so I think the preparing the verse ahead of time is good because there is a resource that has also the transliteration. Or the Devanagari by itself that I posted in the group today. And that's pretty cool. Let me show that to you all real quick. So this one, we have this translation, which is the same translation by the same Swami, but it has the Devanagari alongside the English. So I posted that link in the book club. But there's also this cool one that I posted today. I found a site that has the entire text in Devanagari in here. This guy right here, super nifty. These are all the chapter or the books of the, Srimad Devi Bhagavata Mahapurana is what this one is. And if you click in, this will be book 1, chapter 1. If you're a
Devi, are you sharing it? Because we are not seeing it.
Oh, I must be only sharing something. Let's see. These screen share things are funny. Let's do whole screen.
Oh, this is cool.
Is that sharing? Yep.
Yep.
So this link on the book club, I guess I gotta go through that again. I just posted it in there. There's like a little chat in there.
Okay.
So there is the text with the Devanagari, and then this is the entire, like, just basically a text file of all the Devanagari of the entire Devi Bhagavatam. So if you're a Devanagari nerd and you want to double check what the author's translation is, there's a good way to do it. So definitely a good resource. I wish there was a text with all of them together. But basically, now that we have chanted the verse, let me read it in English for y'all. In the same way, the literature Shitya is of three kinds. I think I spelled that wrong. I think that's Sahitya. That which describes the people to live with their legitimate wives is the best, which describes about prostitutes is the middling, and that which makes people live with others' wives is the worst. A very funny verse to pick randomly. Maybe a little context, I think, around that verse. It's actually kind of discussing types of literatures. Grab it. Might need a little more context from that before we dive in. So chapter 6, 7 here.
It's on 4.
Oh, I'm on 4. So a lot has happened so far, actually. You definitely have this like duel between Devi Bhagavatam and the Vaishnava Srimad Bhagavatam, where it seems like Devi Bhagavatam is trying to reinvent those stories that are in Srimad Bhagavatam. So, for example, you have the story of Vishnu's head being severed, and the explanation in Devi Bhagavatam always goes back to the Devi. And similarly, there will be a description of Madhu and Kaitaba and that story from Srimad Bhagavatam and how it relates to Devi, Yoga Maya actually, and how she deludes the two, which indicates her superiority. So it's kind of funny to watch that duel going on. Oh gosh, where am I? Chapter 5, 6.
Was it Vishnu or Brahma's head that was severed?
There's a bowstring that snaps and severs Vishnu's head.
Oh. Okay.
Why am I not seeing this?
It's also interesting, like, the use of like these words and like even how it's translated, like, the meaning of
Here it is.
like even using the word prostitute and that kind of it's really interesting. Actually, this is a great verse to pick.
I don't know why I'm not finding this one.
It's right there at the bottom.
It's right there.
Yes.
Left side, and then a part at the
Get it?
Am I crazy?
that's 6.
This is 6, 7, right?
So 7, 8.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Why is that not lining up? Let's see. I am in chapter 6, right? Yep.
Yeah. So that is the verse at the bottom.
1, 6, 7.
Right?
Yes.
Natesham Sada. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is my English not looking right? Let's see. I don't know what I did.
Above it.
Yeah.
Go like scroll. No, I'm sorry. Like scroll to that the Devanagari and look above it. No.
Oops. You're talking about
Like in the text that we're looking.
yeah, this one.
Yeah. Where is?
So here's the Devanagari looks right. It's just the English translation that I pasted in there must be wrong. Let's do this. Okay.
Because I don't see the word for like some of these in that text.
Yeah.
Like the Hindi, like the Devanagari words.
Yeah, he's got the translations are slightly different. I think I pulled that translation from the other one. So let me do this. I've got you guys over here. My baby's putting up a fight in the other room. Maybe I'll just read it from here. Only
Yeah.
they want discriminative knowledge of right and wrong, of the real and unreal, and a knowledge of discrimination leading to moksha or final liberation. This is the only point of difference. Therefore, persons that have no liking to hear of Bhagavata and books like it are like beasts. There is no doubt in this. Behold, deer and some other animals can enjoy well the sense of hearing like men, and the serpents, though wanting in the organ of hearing, become charmed quite like men, as if tasting pleasure of hearing sweet sounds. That's actually a much better verse.
Yeah, because
I'll read it another time. Only they want discriminative knowledge of right and wrong, of the real and unreal, and a knowledge of discrimination leading to moksha or final liberation. This is the only point of difference. Therefore, persons that have no liking to hear Bhagavata and books like it are like beasts. There is no doubt in this. Behold, deer and some other animals can enjoy well this sense of hearing like men, and the serpents, though wanting in the organ of hearing, become charmed quite like men, as if tasting the pleasure of hearing sweet sounds.
If you have the book, it's on page 20 at the top of the page. Like the second sentence.
Yeah, I think there's like a slight difference in some of his translations. Welcome back, babe.
thank you.
Did you send us a copy of that translation that you have?
Yeah, so this is the same Swami. It's just that he's broken out the verses. So in the one that you normally get, the first paragraph on chapter 6 is actually verse 1 through 44. So he doesn't quite break it out as much in the raw English translation. Whereas this one that has the Devanagari, it's a little more broken out.
Yeah, it says the same thing on page 20. It's just we can't tell which verse is which.
I know, I tried to get them to line up.
That's what I was saying. It's on page 20, right?
Yes, it is. It starts with the second sentence on page 20.
Right. You go, but we are like, I'm looking at page 20. Which page are we looking at?
49?
48,
One in this text is 26.
26.
Yeah.
But the page number at the top of the screen says 49.
Oh, over here. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's like a few intro pages. Well, let's think about that. Does anyone have anything they want to share on this verse? I like in a lot of Vedic literature, there's always comparisons to animals or like the natural world. And it's almost like if something happens in the natural world, the Vedic literature like sees it as authoritative. Like if the deer does something in nature, you can indicate that this is a law almost, and we can then make metaphors based on like what happens in nature. So in this case, it's like, oh, the deer enjoys hearing, and just like snakes can be charmed and they enjoy hearing. Like you can kind of draw some comparisons to what happens in nature, but also differentiating that humans have a different capacity for hearing, like Puranic or Vedic literature. Romilly, are you talking? I think you're on mute.
Oh, hello. It's the last verse we're looking at, right?
Yeah. In this text it's 7 through 8. On the other text it's kind of hard because he has verse 1 through 44, but it starts with
Yeah.
only they want discriminative knowledge of right and wrong.
Right.
This one here.
Yeah. It's interesting to see like that. Okay, so the other one you showed, it's like a more of an overall comprehensive, like a chunk of verses, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the physical text, I'm gonna grab it. We have this one, which is
Yeah, that's what
same Swami, but it's formatted a little different and no Devanagari, so I do enjoy the one with Devanagari. Book 1. My wife really marks up her texts. I think this was page 20 in this book. Shamali was saying?
Yeah.
Shamala.
Yep. And just after the first period from the top of the page.
Yeah. And even when we look at, like, if we go to this kind of in this page that we are looking at on the screen, on the right hand column, you go down and where it starts wearily out of the 5 organs of perception, and then you go and it says, it has this, therefore the pandits divide in 3 classes: the objects of hearing, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, the Vedas, and it says here the literature, sahitya, is the rajasic. That also, I'm like fixated on why there's a huge discrepancy. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. I know these two, it's the same author. It's just he also translates slightly different here. It's only slightly different. Like this verse that we're reading now, only they want discriminative knowledge, and here it starts.
Oh, I see the wives part now. It must be a different verse.
Yeah, that is a different verse. That's the end of the big chunk of verse 1 through 44, basically. Because I also have a digital copy of this to confuse even more. And he doesn't break out the verses very well in this physical text.
So because, parts of that part that I read about the literature, the sahitya, is in those, like the description. And then if you go further down, you will see that which gives moksha is good and excellent. That which gives heavens is my middling and which gives the worldly pleasures is worse. In the same way, and it should essentially, the other one is a synopsis of like all of this. See?
Yeah, so this one would be all the way over here. Because this verse, this is now just broken out.
Yeah.
So this now goes into that section, which I had the wrong English when I put the PowerPoint up.
Yeah.
So it's actually this section here. But it is interesting. I know in this is talked about in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Like
Yes.
Thakur talks about this a lot. How like don't read fiction, you know. And I think that's kind of what it's getting at there is like the like the fictional literature is like a lower thing for you to hear based on the gunas. And he's always talking about how, you know, read scripture or listen to scripture rather than listening to
I love
fiction, which is interesting though, because Thakur becomes like the patron saint of the theater house. You know, and his picture was hung in theater houses throughout Bengal, which is a very interesting position for him to be in because often the back of the theater house was a brothel, or the theater workers were, you know, sex workers on the side. So he, in a way, became patron saint of sex workers in a lot of ways. Very interesting. And there was in the gospel, there was always that story of, do you remember her name? The prostitute? That was Romilly. Yeah, I think it is. There was some prostitute in the gospel that Thakur says
like
when he sees her, he says, "Mother, I see that you're in that form too."
Right. I mean, and the word for like prostitute, quote unquote, is randi
Oh,
in Hindi, you know.
yeah.
And yeah, when he was, someone sent these three women, right, to him. I think that's the story you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to find the word randi in one of these. This right here.
Do you have anything you want to say, babe? Why don't we drop in for a moment and we'll move into the meditation phase. So everyone, just find a comfy seat.
Let's see what we have.
Hmm? Find a comfy seat. Let your eyes either fall closed or slanted down at an angle. They don't have to be closed. Whatever you find to be comfortable. And just take a moment. Let's inhale and exhale. And I'll read the verse very slowly as we're in this more meditative state. Only they want discriminative knowledge of right and wrong, of the real and the unreal, and a knowledge of discrimination leading to moksha or final liberation. This is the only point of difference. Therefore, persons that have no liking to hear of Bhagavata and books like it are like beasts. There is no doubt in this. Behold, deer and some other animals can enjoy well the sense of hearing like men, and the serpents, though wanting in the organ of hearing, become charmed quite like men, as if tasting the pleasures of hearing sweet sounds. And taking a moment to reflect on that in silence. finding like what's beneath the literal meaning of the text and thinking about its allegory or its metaphor. I think it's an interesting question to ask, where is Ma in this verse? And why is it that this was the random verse that was selected? And maybe take one more breath. Wiggle your fingers and toes. And open your eyes or just find a comfortable way to be. And come back into the text and into the room with this sort of new understanding. Anything jump out at you? No?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He's not really giving me space to be very meditative.
I think it's interesting. It's almost like were you gonna chime in, Yogamai?
Oh, I was saying that this reminds me of something I was reading in Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada's commentary on the Upadeshamrita of Rupa Goswami. And in one of the purports, he talks about in devotional practice, like curating what one hears, because the mind can be so easily swayed and attracted by hearing, like, and I think the word, it is very probably like Bhaktivedanta Swami way. He says if we don't hear about Krishna consciousness, we're liable to hear about all sorts of nonsense. And there's a lot of nonsense out of this world. So I think the metaphor of like snakes, even though they can't hear, they're attracted. They have a capacity to be drawn in by the senses, which is a cool. There's a lot of like Upanishads and Puranas have a lot of animal nature type metaphors. Like I'm thinking of like the 24 gurus of Dattatreya that in the 11th canto, where the workings of samsara are described in terms of like plants and animals and like natural phenomena.
Yeah, it's like the underlying meaning there is like that sound is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's different types of sound. Which is kind of the whole Samkhya cosmology anyway, right? Like everything is, the triguna, all of the material manifestation is impacted by one of those qualities. So in this way, like we're indicating in this verse, like sound has extreme power. power for liberation, or power for, entrapment, essentially. Like the pleasure of sound can be spiritual or it can be mundane. And everything, including deer and, animals, are susceptible to sound. And it doesn't take like extreme intelligence to perceive it or to desire it. However, it's still very powerful. So it's like warning us and cautioning us to what sounds we take into our life.
It's also interesting in a sense. I mean, we're talking about Bach, right? And
Yeah.
And so, going back to like kind of addressing where I really like the question when you ask like, where is mine, all of this, and she's Bach, right? And whether it's implicitly, it's very tacit, right? It's stated about, so what, and the very fact that it's in Samskrita and in this language, in these vibrational sounds, right? So not just, we are so used to having a word and translating it and transliteralizing it, yet those individual sounds that come from Sanskrit in itself is the vibration that's given, right? So it's not just how we kind of conceptualize sound, but it's also the vibration upon hearing the Sanskritic narration of it and what it does to you in hearing, right? What it does to, like how it affects the Panchamahabhutas, right? And so I think that's where Ma is, right? In those the vibrations of each of those, the Varnamala, for lack of a better explanation. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
very true. It's like even in like Shiva style tantra, like the entire universe is built off, the syllables of the Sanskrit alphabet. It's like the cosmology is originating in sound, which is in a way also kind of biblical, right? It's like, oh, like the word, it begins with the word, the Vedic universe in a lot of ways. She's scowling at me. The Vedic
That's
universe in a lot of
exactly
ways
what I
also
was
begins with the word.
thinking. Yeah, you said it. I just keep hearing the word, the creation, the sound, and the word was God, and the word was with God, and all creation comes from Ma. So they're saying the same things in very different ways, and here we're hearing it in a much more ancient text.
yeah, I mean,
That's it.
yeah, I mean, Shamala, you said it. Yeah, it's perfect because when you said that, we don't have to kind of go into like this intellectualization of it. It's like you simply remember in the beginning there was Om, right? And that's kind of where it is the creation of it. I think I really love that question you ask about, where is mine, all of this.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in the last one, because if you think about it, Ma is called creatrix, right? Or in the Vedic literature, the Urnanabi, like she is the spider and the web comes out of her and she also lives in the web. So she is the creation and the creator. She creates the universe and lives inside of it. So in this way, it's like sound comes out of her, but she's also Vach, like she is sound. Like she is Saraswati, the speech comes from her, but she also is the sound itself. and our baby was making plenty of sounds.
Well, it also, I'm thinking of, how Ma and her name can't be separate. So when you hear her name, you're actually experiencing her, because Kali, she is embodied by her name, right? The sound of her name is her very presence. And when we chant mantra and all of these offerings of devotion that we do, it's not, I mean, in a sense, it's an act of devotion to Ma, right? We chant kirtan and all these things to worship Ma, and at the same time, we are, I don't like to use the word manifesting because I think it's so overly used, but we're essentially really we're manifesting her presence, right? We're sparking her presence to come in and be with us, because she's embodied by her name.
Yeah.
The sound of her name.
Yeah, true.
I'm always going to bring it back to kirtan and mantra.
It's just the sound plays such an important part in the entire like Vedic
Yeah.
cosmology, So it's like it's kind of relating to it here, like what types of sounds we should consume in a way. It's like it's almost about consumption, because it's saying like later on it reveals like, oh, the Vedas and Shastras are sattvic, so like you want to consume that literature, and the the non-fictional literature like Shakespeare is is rajasic. It's based in the element of passion. And then what's funny is finding
like news, which is like lower than Tabasa.
yeah, and then finally news is worse than
Girl.
fiction. So it does almost give you a template of like what types of consumption of sound you should have. News being the worst. It says war news.
War news. Well,
Yeah.
I'm using news specifically because we have this argument a lot of, this heated discussion a lot about whether or not it's okay to have news on in the background when Koa can hear it.
I go through periods of needing to watch all
Like
of the news
24/7, that was really obnoxious.
versus like I don't want to watch any news at all.
And I just don't want Koa's little ears hearing that all the time.
I'm telling her we have to remain politically active, and
Of
therefore
course.
we have to consume all of the political,
No.
to have any political stance, we
No,
have to
follow
know what's
the
going on.
line and
Yeah.
you'll get all the news you should know.
Yeah. I've struggled with that balance.
Sorry
You
about
could
it.
always wear one headphone so you can hear it and the baby can't,
That's true.
to remain engaged.
That's
Or
like
you
Thakur
could,
says, hold one hand to God and one hand to the world, and then eventually you will hold both hands to God.
yeah. Durga, when you were speaking of the name, is it Namarupa?
Mhm.
Right?
They're
Yeah.
one and the same.
Rupa, there's no difference between Noma and Rupa. Like Ma, it's her name. Well, let's see. What other part of this exercise do we have here? Ask a couple questions. The prayer part is turned into a question, like meaning, how does the verse relate to your life? That's kind of a difficult answer. Well, I'll read it one more time. Usually you only read it 3 times. I read it like 5 times, but can't get enough. Only they want discriminative knowledge of right and wrong, of the real and unreal, and a knowledge of discrimination leading to moksha or final liberation. This is the only point of difference. Therefore, persons that have no liking to hear of Bhagavata and books like it are like beasts. There is no doubt in this. Behold, deer and some other animals can enjoy well the sense of hearing like men, and the serpents, through wanting in the organ of hearing, become charmed quite like men, as if tasting the pleasure of hearing sweet sounds. I think I actually touched on how the verse, how does it relate to your life? I feel like in a way it's telling us, to consume the sounds of scripture pretty directly. It's like, don't watch war news. It gets particularly called out.
But I feel like that's where it's challenging, though, being that I think all of us in this group are devotees, but we're also, you know, passionate about social justice and these things that are, we have to hear what's going on in the, you know, in the news. So maybe the question for me personally is, okay, well, how can I honor this verse and keep my ear to Ma all the time, or as constant as possible, while also like what Thakur said, right? Have one hand to Ma and one hand to the world. How do you have one ear to Ma at all times, like at her heartbeat?
Yeah.
And then, because the truth is that all of these people that are suffering that we're hearing about in the news, even though it's a more Tamasic form of something to listen to, but all of those folks that are suffering are also Ma.
Yeah.
So
And I think later we'll see that our politics, our personal politics, will enter into the text, because the text is going to say overtly misogynistic things. That
yeah, it does. It's
we're
really...
going to have to bring in the social justice element. Like, why is it saying this? This is a goddess text. This doesn't make any sense. But I like that.
I don't know the answer. That's my question. I have no idea what the answer is right now.
I think it's Yogamaya, were you going to say something before I interrupted?
I'm still thinking. You can go first.
Okay. I mean, it's really hard, right? I mean, those of you who know me, I struggle with this shit all the time. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I hear the news on somewhere.
Right? But lately, as I have gotten more into, like, there was a time where I delved deep into one thing, say it was because of my work, right? The work I do at the university. And then now, like, switching gears and looking into scripture. So there was always this kind of personally where I was more heavily involved in one aspect and not so much in the other, right? So then going back to your like Ayurvedic principles and then looking at the Pancha Kosha, right? And you have this Annamaya Kosha, right? And so it's almost like a peeling of the layering, undoing of this Annamaya Kosha as we go into like dealing with the world and all the madness that there is, right? These tremendously hard things. Knowing scripture and knowing about Kali Yuga, right? Knowing that this practice of devotion that we have to Ma in its most ritualized form is a way that we can navigate Kali Yuga, right?
Yeah.
Right? Our offerings, our bhakti, this is like the blueprint for Kali Yuga, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, when we deal with and when we are, whether it's individually fighting, communally fighting, whatever, when we are involved in these struggles and challenges, we are really actually, as a collective, going through these karmic patternings that we've had, right? Our ancestral karmic patternings. And they all, it's all there in scripture. It's all there in these books, right? In these sound vibrations that we have. Like, you look at the Sanskrit Varnamala and it's all there, right? And the if you look at, like you said, the Shiva Tandav, right? All this. And it's really interesting. And then also, when you look at on a personal level, and this has helped me a lot, to be more in tune the with nature, and specifically with the planets, right? And alignment and your natal chart, right?
Yeah.
And so there is a time for all of this. There is a time where we have to be more involved with what's going around. And for me personally, now it's a time for me to withdraw from that and focus on my religious practice and my devotion, at the same time using that for communal healing and things like this, right? So there are all these stages in our lives that are informed by, you know, the Navagraha, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, yeah, I've noticed that I don't put on KPFK and NPR that often. I'm in the car now.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to mantra, but there are times, that I will just really want to say something and react, and I do, you know, like, yeah, this is, but then there are other things we can do.
Yeah.
So it's striking a balance, and it's always about striking a balance every
Yeah.
single day. So I that's kind of where I come from with this verse, um, and what has helped me is knowing my natal chart, knowing how to navigate. So
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I was thinking just along the lines of what Durga was saying about the non-difference of the name and the rupa, the form. In preparation for a reading group that I'm going to be doing, I've been reading a book called Harinam Chintamani by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it's a Bengali poem about the glories of the holy name, and it goes through the 10 aparadhs, the 10 errors that you make when chanting the name. Because in the stages of sadhana, in that paradigm, it goes first you're chanting with namaparad, chanting with these mistakes, and then you develop taste for it, and you becomes namapas, which is the practice of the holy name. And one of these 10 offenses that you're supposed to guard against is giving the name an interpretation, giving it a signifier, like mother Ma's name is Ma, and like giving that an interpretation in whatever context, will be saying that it signifies something else other than itself, name of Krishna, the name of Kali. And it has kind of some of the tone of this verse when it says people who won't hear the Bhagavata are like, and like an animalistic condition. Like there's, I think the phrase he uses is one who hears from someone who makes interpretations of the name and downplays the potency of the sound vibration of God. One should purify oneself by jumping into the Ganga with all of your clothes on. So I recall, I think his Neem Karoli Baba once said that it says, if you like, Krishna Das tells the story of Neem Karoli Baba, the Westerners were chanting at his ashram. He's like, oh, say your phony Ram Ram, keep going, because if you say it once correctly, you leave your body instantly. So it really enlivens the process of chanting japa and kirtan when you meditate on the reality that exists below the surface of your like samsaric conditioning, the reality that's happening. you know. And I think Holy Mother even says, like, whether or not you're feeling it, something is happening within yourself when you chant. Like the name works by itself independently of your consciousness of it.
Yeah, very true. She was very famously like, do your japa all the time. Like if you're doing your chores, just do your japa like on the side.
Mhm.
My my exists in all things. So be it politics, be it her holy name, be it whatever we're taking in with our eyes, with our ears, all things, my exist. So how whatever it is that I'm doing, how am I maintaining that connection with mom? I think that that is just my practice. How am I going to maintain that connection with mine no matter what it is I'm doing in the world?
That's a
And
great point. It's it's like
yeah.
I'm sorry, I think you were still going.
No, that's it. That's just the whole that's everything for me. How am I gonna maintain my connection with mom?
I think that's an excellent point because it's like
Sorry.
when you do prashad and you offer it to Ma, like it's food, and then you offer it to Ma, and then it's her grace. And in the same way, it's like your activism is like purified in a way by Ma. Like it doesn't have to be separated. Like those activities that are involved in our spiritual life, when our activism becomes our spiritual life too, it's like they're now conjoined. We're no longer like doing a rajasic activity because it's rooted in like a sattvic reality, which is Ma. So that's an excellent point. Like all of our devotional activities are mundane activities. Like it's just incense, it's just food, it's just water until it's offered, and then it's something different.
And we can make
What I,
everything an offering to mom.
what I, yeah, I'm sorry.
I just said we can make everything an offering to mom.
Okay. I really, I try to embody that and embrace that. But when I see so much death or hear about so much death and devastation, and I'm just going to think, I mean, it's everywhere. Like if you look at Palestine, if you look at the earthquake,
Yeah.
right? So when we look at it from the point of view of our activism, right? And then you're rooting it in the I, right? Yeah, we as ourselves, we can spiritualize, ritualize, and see this as our offering to Ma, right? But then you see all this, and that's why I brought about this idea, we are in Kali Yuga, right? And so we are going to, as bhaktas, as devotees, as completely surrendering to Ma, we are then also inundated, right, with this world we live in, this samsara of like death and devastation, right? And so then if we are seeing what we do, the mundane, as an offering to her, then this is her offering to us, right? It's her offering to us so that we really begin the process of shining that that light of discernment, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the constant struggle, right? Because and this is just my experience, for me, when I see those things happening, like when I see the stories upon stories of indigenous women disappearing, when I see the stories of, say, Muslims being lynched in India, okay, or when I see these things happening or hear about it, then my first reaction is, oh, I need to do something, right? I need to do something. Like, then I bring it back to me, right? But then it's like, just like what we do in these mundane, banal things that we do is an offering, these larger narratives are her offering to us because we are in Kali Yuga.
Very true.
And so it's mind-boggling how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like as a, you know, yeah, it's mind-boggling. And I think that's where Vak comes in. This is where the sweet sound of the the vibrations of Sanskrit comes in, where you kind of sit with it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like, what are you to do as an individual? Like, we are nothing, right? And she's everything. Like, yes, we have to be activated to do this, but at the same time, we are living our collective kind of narrative in this Kali Yuga, right? We are. I don't know. So I'm like, yeah, constantly vacillating.
It is wild
Well,
to think about sound in that way because, like, sound is often so powerful, it gets in your body and can give you trauma, you know? Like, for example, in 2020, we were trapped in a tunnel protesting and they shot at us with beanbags. And, like, the sound of that shotgun going off is, like, imprinted, and it's like that's a Rajasic sound that just gets stuck in your body, And on the flip side of that, it's like, the Sattvic sounds are almost curative for that experience. So it is a lot harder for me to see Ma in that scenario, but it probably is more where she's coming and, like in the tunnel being trapped. It doesn't feel like Ma, but in reality, like there was a lot of a really big lesson there.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that is kind of how I'm looking at it at this point.
And I of course I had to step away I have, I don't go to any protests anymore. Not that there's big ones anymore, but yeah.
I think, Romilly, what you said is it's Ma's offering to us, and maybe it is her offering to us so that we will continue to run to her.
Right.
Because everything in this world will always go to hell over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But the only
Exactly.
solace that we have is in her.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, that. And that's so beautifully said because it's just what you just said, because it is actually going back to this verse, it is complete surrender
Mhm.
at that point. Because what else can you do other than complete surrender?
True.
Nothing. We can't run around the globe and fix everything. We're
No.
like,
No, but Romilly and I want to give it. We want to give it a go. We want to try.
Durga and I, we give it a go.
Strap the baby on. Let's go.
Yeah.
But it is tracking. It's just it's yeah.
Oh, shoot.
thank you so much for this. This was wonderful.
The last part of our exercise is what is the text asking you to do, which we've
I
probably
feel like I kind of got into
riffed
that.
on that a lot. But I think it's in one word, listen. It's asking us to listen.
But also
Surrender.
aware of what you're listening to.
Yeah. Yeah, not just listen to her.
Surrender to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
In all things.
Listen to Mom.
Yeah. Listen to her, and to me, it's, I guess, an act of complete surrender.
Mhm.
And listen to your wife.
Yeah. This is important.
This is so important.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Although I'm just
Oh.
convinced that Ma is not speaking to me, so
Oh, she speaks
she
it.
has to remind me all the time.
She's speaking to you through me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna
Yep.
go.
Thank
But
you.
thank you so
Thanks
much.
for joining, Jai Ma.
Jai
Until
Ma,
next time.
Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Bye.
Bye.